All right, we're going to dive into the powerful and often invisible forces of addiction. But here's the wild part. The most addictive things in our lives, they might not be what you think they are at all. I mean, what if the forces that shape your everyday habits, from the food you eat to the apps you scroll through, are actually being deliberately designed to get you hooked, using a science that's been perfected for decades? So, you'd probably assume there's some kind of official scientific list out there, right? A top 10 chart ranking the most addictive substances on the planet. Well, the surprising truth is, it doesn't exist. It's a myth. The only official list we've got is a legal one from the DEA, the Controlled Substances Act, and it's not a scientific ranking. And get this, the most crucial part, it completely leaves out two of the most addictive substances known to humanity, nicotine and alcohol. That right there shows you just how disconnected our laws are from the actual science. But look, just because there's no official list, it doesn't mean experts are scratching their heads. They could easily make one. The scientific consensus is totally clear. Any real evidence-based ranking would have nicotine, opioids like heroin, cocaine, meth, and of course, alcohol right at the top. These are the usual suspects, no surprise there. But the story goes way deeper than just these. So that brings up a really fascinating question. If we can't, ethically run experiments on people to see what gets them hooked, how in the world do scientists figure this stuff out? This is the big challenge, right? We obviously can't just give people a bunch of heroin and take notes. So researchers had to get really clever. They figured out they could basically reverse engineer this knowledge just by watching us out in the wild. What they do is they take these tried and true methods from lab animal studies and map them directly to our own behaviors. For instance, you know how a lab mouse will press a lever over and over again for a tiny reward? Well, that's the human equivalent of waking up in the middle of the night just to check your phone. And paying for an unlimited data plan? In the lab, that's called a progressive ratio. It's a measure of just how hard you're willing to work for something. These aren't just quirks. They're real-world experiments happening all the time. Okay, and this is where our whole investigation just takes a massive turn. Because once you have this framework for understanding behavior, you start to realize addiction isn't just about drugs. It's about any behavior that can be engineered to be compulsive. So it's super important to be clear on what addiction actually is. It isn't just a habit you do a lot, like brushing your teeth. It's defined by these key things: losing control, doing it even when it causes negative consequences, feeling a powerful compulsion, and then experiencing withdrawal and tolerance. A behavior like compulsive shopping, it can tick every single one of those boxes. Let's just take the food industry. They are absolute masters of this. Years ago, they pioneered a concept they call the bliss point, and this is no accident. It is the scientifically engineered, absolutely precise combination of salt, sugar, and fat that is designed to completely override your body's natural signals to stop eating. And this example really hits the core idea. Think about an orange. Yes, it's got sugar, but it also has fiber and water. These are like natural breaks that tell your brain, hey, we're full. A soda, on the other hand, that's just hyper-concentrated sugar with all of those breaks deliberately removed. Addiction is rarely caused by something in its natural form. It's caused by human engineering that strips away our built-in ability to say, that's enough. So, if these things are all engineered, it leads to a pretty obvious question, doesn't it? Who are the engineers, and why are they doing it? Well, the argument is that there's a huge, incredibly profitable industry that's dedicated to exactly this. The sources for this explainer argue that corporations use the science of addiction to systematically design products and digital experiences that create compulsive behaviors. For them, it's not a bug, it's the main feature. And what's the one solution we've been sold for decades to fight all this? This, a simple little 3-word phrase that puts all of the blame, all of the responsibility, squarely on you, the individual. But let's be honest, how much of a choice do we really have? The environment we live in is itself engineered to make the addictive option the cheapest, the easiest, and the most available one. Think about it. Fresh, healthy food is often expensive and hard to get, while a hyper-processed snack is cheap and on every single corner. It's not a fair fight. According to the sources we're looking at, this whole personal responsibility narrative is a deliberate strategy.
The argument is that it cleverly shifts the blame away from the people who design the system and puts it onto the individuals just trying to get by. It makes people turn their frustration inward, on themselves, instead of questioning the system itself. Now, I know what you might be thinking. This all sounds like some massive, coordinated conspiracy, right? A bunch of villains in a dark room, planning it all out. But the scary part is, it doesn't have to be. What we're actually seeing is a phenomenon called emergent systemic control. It starts simply. Individual companies are all just trying to maximize their own interests, profit, user engagement, whatever. But because all those individual goals happen to align, their separate actions combine to create this incredibly powerful system of control that just reinforces itself. No secret meetings or conspiracies are needed, just perfectly aligned incentives. And now, this decades-long trend of engineered addiction is being put on steroids by the most powerful tool humanity has ever built. I mean, just look at this acceleration curve. We went from clumsy focus groups back in the 50s to collecting huge amounts of web data in the 90s to the fire hose of social media and mobile data in the 2010s. The sheer amount of information being used to understand and shape our behavior has grown exponentially. And now, we are in a totally new era. And I want to be crystal clear about this. This is not science fiction. This is not some future threat. AI is the ultimate accelerant, and it's being used right now to create hyper-personalized addiction triggers for each and every one of us in real time, way faster and more effectively than any team of humans could ever dream of. To make this threat feel less abstract, the sources present this really chilling hypothetical scenario. This number, 19, represents the people killed in projected protests in Nepal after a social media blackout in 2025. It's a stark, brutal illustration of just how deep our dependency on these systems could become and how easily that could be weaponized. The terrifying reality is that our normal defenses, passing new laws, holding elections, they all move at a snail's pace. They might be completely, utterly useless against the sheer speed and scale of AI-optimized manipulation. Which brings us to the final critical question. When addiction is perfectly engineered and personalized by an AI that knows your psychological weaknesses better than you do, is just say no even a meaningful response anymore? Or are we basically showing up to a drone fight with a butter knife? That is the challenge we are all facing right now.